ready to be inspired by the great things happening in rural education. The Rural Scoop will bring you new ideas and innovative solutions. We'll dive into education issues and we'll highlight what's working in your rural communities. You will hear from a variety of educators, administrators, professionals, and others who will provide relevant and engaging content in each episode. And now, serving up the scoop, here's your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf.
Welcome to the Rural Scoop and a recording of the Rural Scoop, which is something that we haven't done before, but today I think you're going to find out why we're doing it this way. The Rural Scoop is where we dive into issues, innovations, and stories that shape rural education. And today we have a fantastic episode lined up for you. So joining us is Eric Stuebner, the Special Projects Manager in the Academic Standards Department at the Arizona Department of Education. And Eric is here to talk about two incredible new tools that were designed to support Arizona's educators. First is Passport, which is a cutting-edge portal that transforms our state standards into digital frameworks. And then ADEL, the Arizona Digital Educators Library, which provides access to standards-aligned content, lesson planning resources, and formative assessment tools, all for free, which is awesome.
Free.
So these platforms really do represent a significant leap forward in how educators can access and apply standards and build those innovative lessons that we want to see in our classrooms, and then connect with valuable resources, especially in our rural communities. So I know many of our listeners are constantly searching for ways to enhance their educational practices while overcoming that unique challenge that we face in rural education in resource scarcity. So these tools are going to be game changers. So with that, let's dive in and learn more about Passport and ADEL and how they can empower our schools and our rural educators. So it's my pleasure to introduce Eric Stuebner. So Eric, welcome. It's great to have you with me.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I know I've been pestering you to get in front of the rural schools to push out this great product that we have.
Well, we're happy that you're here. And so I'm gonna start with a softball question, which is, give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at the Department of Education.
Yeah, thanks. I was a classroom teacher for about 11 years before I got my master's in ed leadership. Started kind of going down the principal route, and then I got sidetracked into instructional coaching around educational technology, and that really took hold. Then I ended up back into the Mesa Public Schools system as an ed tech coach during the pandemic, really helping teachers tie in their technology use with supporting the needs of their students. And then randomly scrolling on LinkedIn one day, I saw an opportunity with the Department of Ed, and I kind of just threw my hat in the ring, and all of a sudden, one thing led to another, and here I am. I built a standards portal with the help of an amazing vendor that we chose. And I'm happy to be here to share it with you guys.
All right. Well, so with that, let's dive in. Let's not keep them in suspense. So, so first of all, can you just provide a 30,000 view overview of Passport and ADEL, and what are the primary objectives for each of those resources? And then how do they address the needs that Arizona educators might have?
Yeah, so one of Superintendent Horn's initiatives was to build a portal that hosted standards-aligned materials and supplemental instructional resources and videos that could assist teachers in unpacking our standards, accessing them, creating new resources, finding what's going on in the field. So that was the portion of ADEL, the Digital Educators Library. But in order to do that, we needed to take a first step, which was to digitize our standards. And that was done into the CASE framework, which stands for Competencies and Academic Standards Exchange. It's standards for standards. So the way that we put our standards in joins roughly 30 plus states in having their frameworks hosted at the state level in the CASE network. So what this allows vendors to do is access our standards in a truth format so that they are always going to be getting the sole source of truth for our standards. And so that if you have, let's say Power School, for instance, is they pull our standards from Passport. So you know that you're getting up to the minute. Any edits that we do, things like that will be pulled, and get rid of those pesky PDFs where you always seem to lose 1 or 2 pages of the most important standards.
Yeah, no doubt. So obviously Superintendent Horn had a desire to get this in front of educators, but even a little bit more broad than that, what inspired the department to start looking at this? And have you had feedback from Arizona educators, and how has that enhanced the design?
It was drawn in the need to fill a gap that we were seeing with educators finding high quality standards aligned resources. And so in order to do that, we wanted to make sure that first we were presenting our standards in a way that teachers new to the field. I know we have a lot of teachers that join us as a second career. They come from industry. They need a little bit more of a lift when we get those standards off the ground. So being able to provide some benchmarks or some stepping stones for them by providing first, here's a high quality lesson plan, or here's what's going on. And then also being able to tie in some of those community partners out in the field. So for instance, the Arizona Science Teachers Association is a great partner, and they've provided some great lessons that allow us to not only show off our standards, but show off some of the great work our Arizona educators are doing.
Nice. So for Passport, how does Passport enhance the accessibility and usability, more importantly, probably, of Arizona's academic standards compared to those PDFs that you mentioned?
Yeah. So a great use case really is the ability to tie our standards into an LMS. For instance, if a district out there is utilizing Canvas, we just recently, based on some feedback that we've had from districts, built a tool that allows Canvas users to pull our standards from Passport straight into Canvas for use with their outcomes. So they can automatically start planning in their native environment with our standards from Passport. So that, in tying into their SIS, being able to build report cards using our standards from the case network is really where the meat of it lies.
And it integrates, you mentioned one SIS system, but does it integrate with multiple SIS?
I know that there are multiple vendors out there, and because it is a free resource, the case network they have partners, but they're not necessarily tracking who's utilizing. But we do know that College Board, for instance, pulls from it, Concordia. So we have vendors out there that are utilizing this important tool. Power School is a big proponent of it, and we're happy to see that they're out there because we know that they play a role in many of our schools' SIS.
Yeah, definitely. So switching over to ADEL, what are the resources and materials that educators can find in the ADEL system? And how are those resources that you're curating and putting into the system align with the academic standards here in Arizona? Because they're not just Arizona resources.
Yeah. So let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now.
Do it.
So on our landing page, we've modeled ADEL, again, the Arizona Digital Educators Library, off of what several other states have started. Georgia specifically has kind of been our partner in this because they're 5 or 6 years down the road into building their instance of ADEL. And the way that they've done it is they've gone through kind of a virtual learning academy, and they've built their coursework out that way. We felt at the department that was a little too prescriptive by actually providing a curriculum for instance. So what we chose to do instead was kind of break down our subjects and then further break down the standards domains so that our standards teams in the department can begin populating them. So I'm going to grab science, for instance. So you can see just overview, we've got them broken down into elementary, middle, and high school. Let's go into grade 3 science, for instance, and physical science. You can see here that we have right about 8 for physical science. And these are going 3D with GRC, which is a consortium based with Arizona educators, the department, and Brett Molding, who have developed these lessons through the work of their own. So they're out there in the field, learning how to plan these in-depth science lessons and then sharing them back to us, which we're very thankful for because it's a big lift to suddenly start building curriculum and resources for all grade levels and the entire state and what everybody needs. In our first presentations of this, it's still a relatively new product. We're just kind of coming off of our formal launch. But what we've found is when we go out into the field, we're asking our educators, what are those key standards that you're needing resources for? How can we start kind of pulling those ideas in, pulling those resources in? So for instance, here, Periscope is a lesson. And what they've done is they've just had the ability to go in and tag those science lessons straight into the resource, which would then allow them to access that resource. With these lessons specifically, they're 3 to 4 or 5 page lessons. They're very well written. And we wanted to also leave that control back with that team should there be an edit. So instead of actually building the lesson here in our lesson plan tool, what we've done is just copied a link from their agency's Google Drive. So anytime that lesson's going to get updated, it'll be represented here versus having to rewrite it a second time.
So this is a great way for teachers at a site, for example, to collaborate if they were doing a grade level team plan period and they wanted to tweak and adjust how they were going to teach this particular lesson. They're able to then edit and save this tweak that they're doing.
Correct.
And then come back to it later. Can they come back to it next year?
Yep, absolutely. So here in the resource tab, you see this is any of the resources that are front facing to Arizona educators. If I come over into the My Content box, this is private to me as an educator. The department doesn't have any visibility into user accounts. So there's been that question too, like Big Brother's watching how I'm planning, watching what lessons I'm grabbing. We don't have any kind of look back into the different user accounts, and we can't see what's being uploaded as a user unless they choose to share to us. So,
right.
But for instance, if you want, I can get into that, what that looks like as a teacher if they're going to
that'd be
their
great.
own lesson. So as a teacher, if there's kind of 2 areas where an educator can create a lesson. So here in the coursework or also in the My Content collections. So if you want to keep it organized, like I'm a 3rd grade science teacher, I want all of my physical science lessons to be in the same course content, you can add content right here at the bottom. Going to ask you if you want to create a lesson plan, a Sparkle student activity, or any other resource. Other resources would include websites, Google Docs, videos. So again, as teachers are curating those lesson plans and all of those things in physical science, I don't want to lose this video that was so good with the students this year. I'm going to put it in this bucket so that I have it next year. Ability to lesson plan. And this is the new one. This is the big one that released, which is our lesson plan companion. And this is a generative AI tool, free to teachers. Utilize Gen AI to help unpack standards.
Cool.
And this is something that we're really excited about because it's been built with teacher feedback, the iterative process of interviewing teachers, demo team for about a month and a half for coaches and teachers to plan together around a standard, unpack it kind of top to bottom. What are we going to need? And at the very end, it naturally will pull apart your lesson plan and build a Sparkle student activity that you can push out to your students to get that immediate. So
very cool.
I'm just going to do a quick one. And again, this is a very high level. There's a lot to get into with this, but I can just do a quick. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I will grab fourth grade physical science. Okay.
Well, that you can tell would be a time saver for a teacher.
And that's one of those driving forces for us is how can we help teachers and take a lift and give them a little bit more time back in their planning and preparation area. Mm-hmm. So after they kind of start they have the ability, and this was important to us as well when we were doing some demos with other products, was when teachers were planning with ChatGPT, planning with any other large language model, they were getting a very broad, overwritten lesson plan that potentially had resources that they didn't have access to, that had learning that hadn't been accomplished yet. So they didn't have a lot of agency in that plan. For instance, it's going to give us 5 to 6 objectives or targets that they can pull into their lesson and just keep moving on. One of the great things too about this is that it takes off the need for teachers to become prompt engineers and try to think about how to talk to the large language model. It's just giving them the next step. So those prompts are already built into the model that allows them to keep kind of planning from top to bottom and then come out with that Sparkle student assessment at the end.
That's very cool. You mentioned there was another place that they could do that, store their own personal lesson plans.
Yeah, and that is just over here at the My Content collections. So that is the My Content sandbox. And they have that ability to get lessons, Sparkle student activities, and other resources.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about the content that's in here. How is it curated by ADE? How do you ensure that it's high quality, that it's relevant, that it is connected with Arizona standards? What is the review process to ensure that it's included here?
So anything on this page, again, is just my own creation. It's my own collection, and it can be anything that I find. When we're looking at what is on our course page, and this is all of the front facing from our standards department, it has gone through the process of the individual teams. So the social studies team has been doing a lot of work around through their lens of what they're seeing in the field and how they're going to pull out some of this lessons. So here is just a quick look at some of the different partners that they've worked with, C3 Teachers, the OER project, PBS Learning Media. And those are them going out into and kind of curating those lessons. Then they read through them, judge the standards, make sure they're standards aligned. If they're not standards aligned, they can do their best to align them, put them on our resource repository, which is just another click over here that will have materials, but not necessarily standards or resources.
Mm-hmm. Right. So obviously this has been used. It's already out in the field. People are accessing it. What's been the feedback that you've gotten from both leaders and from teachers?
It's been a very positive feedback, and especially from our rural schools that I've had the chance to demo it with. White River in I had the ability to work with them, had a full classroom full of teachers, and they were up. They loved the ability to not only find materials, but create them themselves. So that was really positive. We do have some schools that there's a lot, and we know that we're up against big curriculum partners out there, your Houghton Mifflins, and already have products, and they already have robust portals that have all of their materials, and that's great. And we don't want to take away from the work that those schools have done to vet those materials or the training that's taken place.
Mm-hmm.
What we're hoping this will serve as is that the team comes together, and the third grade team is looking at what they're trying, a standard that they're trying to access. Just they're looking at it's not working. There's a gap. They can come to ADEL, try to find materials that will assist in that or supplement some of that curriculum that they already have, mm-hmm. or create it themselves.
So I'm sure that you've come across teachers and leaders that are at various points in their career pathway, new, yeah. veteran, and everything in between. But talk to me a little bit about how the department sees this helping early career teachers that typically are going to feel overwhelmed when they're having to plan for the standards and ensure that, that they're on point with lesson planning. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. That can be extremely daunting. I remember even just my first year getting handed that basil and getting handed that stack of PDFs of standards and saying,
"You're dating yourself, Eric."
I know.
Basil readers.
Of basil readers, book 1 of 5.
Yeah.
And then that door closes behind you and it's like, oh, I'm in charge now. Okay.
Yeah.
So what our hopes for this product to be is that companion that can help a teacher curate their own materials. So as they start to get organized, they can say, these are those key standards that I need to be focused on in this first quarter. And I'm going to start pulling in and building my own library, essentially. When they work with their coaches and their principals and their partners at the site, and they find what's working, they have that ability to save it and kind of keep it and build their production for the coming year as well. So when you have what works, stack it away like your acorns, and they'll pay off in the spring.
Yeah, definitely. So for rural schools in particular, access to resources, as I've mentioned, is often a challenge.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing to ensure that there's equitable access to Passport and to ADEL?
Thanks. Yeah. Getting it out there has been the struggle. And I'm a one-man crew in the academic standards team. And anytime I hear one of our different departments is going to a conference, can I tag along? Can I come with? I want to make sure that we're getting out there and getting heard. So word of mouth is definitely the best for this product right now. But ensuring that we're hearing what's needed, doing some need surveys from partners around the state, listening to constituents on where we can support, and then trying to plan for those to bolster those resources. Mm-hmm. We're really excited this summer, coming up at our Teachers Institute Leading Change Conference. That's going to be in Glendale in June. We're going to have our first ADEL Resource Summit. So what we're going to be doing is offering teachers a discounted rate to join us at the conference to utilize the lesson plan companion and create resources to kind of start filling the cupboards. So we want to make sure that those cupboards are filled with high quality lessons, and anything that goes through there will then go through a vetting process on our end before it gets published. But we're excited to kind of help showcase the work that Arizona educators are doing.
Definitely a worthy goal for sure.
Yeah.
Um, you showed a little bit about how there's some personalized learning or individualized learning that's possible when you were clicking around in there. But when you have a teacher, especially a newer teacher that needs some assistance in meeting the needs of a variety of students, can you talk a little bit about how those diverse classrooms can be managed with these tools?
Yeah. So we did a pilot with a school in Phoenix, specifically a fifth grade classroom. And when we were doing this work with them, we were asking like, what do your students need? What do you need as a teacher to meet their needs? And for instance, their big request right off the bat was, we need leveled readers to support the text that we're reading in class. It's too high, but it's also too low for some. So we need a variety of text. And so that's where Sparkle, the Sparkle student assessment came in. And if you're a fifth grade teacher, if you have a fifth grade team, this is where the honeypot of resources lives, because that's where our pilot was. So we spent a lot of time in the RI. But here you can see that we have 3 levels of the story of the structure of a corn plant. So what we were able to do was take the text of a corn plant from their book, have Gen AI do some re-leveling of the Lexile, and then build the same assessment for each student in multiple ways so that they're able to access the text and then interact with it in a way that a teacher can get formative feedback.
What about language learners?
So there is, again, inside, there is a text to speech so that they can hear that reading of the text as well as interacting with it in multiple ways.
That's great.
There is, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There is just one last thing. There is a Sparkle bot, which is a little AI bot that does grading for teachers. It does a first pass grading. So in this instance, as a teacher, the prompt is, what are some key characteristics of a corn plant structure? That was straight from the text. We did a model response, the teacher and I. We sat down and wrote that model response and then fed that to SparkleBot. So when the students do have their first answer, SparkleBot will do a passover based on the model prompt and then encourage the student to re-engage with the text a second time, like maybe one more time, and then you can submit your question or your answer, all the while giving the teacher the autonomy to go back and add points or take away from whatever SparkleBot produced.
Nice. So this requires a certain level of technology literacy on the part of the teacher. And that's just the nature of the resources here.
Yeah.
What support is available to those teachers that might need assistance navigating everything that's in these tools?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a Getting Started with ADEL page that has some PDFs. It has some videos. I'm constantly kind of adding new bits into that. And that's in our resource repository, which is the little branch icon. And so the Getting Started with ADEL will just allow a teacher to kind of read through, watch some of those sample lessons. But moreover, I was a teacher. I love being in the classroom. I love getting into onto sites and helping teachers work with this. So either a Zoom call or an invite out to your campus, and I'm happy to come do trainings, more in-depth discussions, and iterate with your campus to see how this can best serve your site.
Nice. That was a very nice offer.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how the administrators that you've piloted and worked with so far, what has been their feedback and how has it improved teaching outcomes in their schools and really assisted them in being that instructional leader on campus?
Yeah. So where we found the most success was the pass back of lessons. So as a teacher is doing a lesson plan, their grade level, they can quickly submit that and share that with their admin, and it would go into a file so that the admin can constantly kind of go in and check how the lesson's written, give feedback, share it back to the teacher with some suggestions, or kind of have that coaching conversation because they have that ability to see what's coming up. Right. So, yeah.
And I know one of the things that people might have questions about is, privacy and security, data security. I mean, you mentioned that there's a section that is exclusive to the teacher. Nobody else can see it.
Yeah.
But as far as lesson plan storage or assessment creation, talk a little bit about what the security and data privacy measures are.
Yeah. So it is hosted on an AWS server, but teachers create their own accounts. They have the autonomy to not even tie it to their school. They can have their own personal account. We would encourage them to use their school account, because there will be future iterations coming where there will be a use case for having that at ade.gov email address or whatever it be, so that you could tie it to your school. But anything like that is secure on the teacher's end.
And if I were a teacher and I noted that maybe there was some additional resources that potentially could be curated in, or maybe there was a different way that something could be set up, if I wanted to give you feedback on what's in ADEL, how could I do that so that, it continues to evolve to meet educator needs?
We do love that, because again, when we started, we had that dream of what are the guiding principles for this tool. And that first one was that it was teacher creation, teacher iteration. So we are wide open for feedback. And so they can email me, Eric, at eric.stuebner@az.gov. Or if you are actually let's say you're in building a lesson, there is a little chat bubble at the bottom of a lesson plan where they can click share with me, and it would share that with a comment code so that they can write their comment. It would give us kind of a screenshot so that we could see how we could fix whatever's needed. But we're wide open for feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So this is obviously a work in progress.
Yes.
Although there's a lot that you guys have progressed on, which is pretty. But what are the future plans for Passport and ADEL? Are there any upcoming features or expansions that educators can anticipate?
Yeah. So if you have ever perused our site and found the performance level descriptors that are tied to the assessments, those rubrics are currently being built into the case framework. We'll be one of the first states to utilize that, which we're pretty excited to be the guinea pig for it. They've been around for several years, and no one's gone down that route. So we said, what if we tied that in? So teachers would have the ability to kind of read those PLDs, input them into their lesson plan, and kind of plan for that level of rigor, which we're really excited about. And then also we're going to be building in some item bank question types into Sparkle, utilizing deprecated pass or AASA test questions. So you'll be able to kind of see what an actual test question looks like, use it, and then write your own based off that test question. So those are coming this spring.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I'll have to have you back on so you could show us what it looks like.
I know. This could be a whole day training. There's so many different paths to go down.
So talk a little bit more about that. You mentioned that there's a conference coming up that they can get a live demo on. You'll come out to the school site and help them. Obviously, there's a place where they can give you some feedback in the tool so that you can help them that way. Are there any other professional development or training session opportunities available to them? Yeah,
this spring I will be starting some webinars and some kind of lunch and learns where I'll put it in our APLD site where they can sign up to either take the course or watch it on their own time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what advice, Eric, would you give to ARSA members or rural educators anywhere that they are about getting started with these platforms and maximizing their potential? Because there's a lot in here.
There's a lot in here. I would say in the past couple of schools that I've worked with, we've definitely had just a conversation about where they are at and what they're wanting from the tool. If it's full-blown curriculum development, that's going to be one path. If it's just resource alignment and collection, that's kind of a different path. So start with that kind of the end in mind so we can start down the right path. But get in, create an account, check out the Getting Started with ADEL tab, and start small. Start with just a lesson plan and then add a resource, and then you can get into the Sparkle, because that's a whole nother training, the different ways that we can use Sparkle to assess your students. But it's a great way to get really informative feedback to your standards.
So, Eric, is there anything that we haven't covered or that you haven't shown us that you want to make sure that we touch on?
I would just say this last tab right here is the standards map. So while I showed Passport earlier, we do have the Passport tied into ADEL as well. So your SIS leads, they can utilize Passport on its own, but our curriculum instruction teams and our teachers can utilize the Passport inside of ADEL. So that gives them the ability to get in, take a look at the standards. One of my favorites, I'm going to pick on them because it is the best, is our ELA standards. And the work that we did to write out the progressions of our standards. So when you come into the standards framework and you click on a standard, have the ability to see, of course, it's not coming up right now. There we go. Have the ability to see what that standard looks like in its progression for students. So you can kind of see where they started in kindergarten all the way down to 12th grade. And again, that would help our incoming teachers as well when they're like, I think that they're doing this and they're, okay, so they're asking questions, but now I need to get them referring to those details in the text.
Yeah.
So that I need to take that next step.
Definitely.
So get in and explore and then reach out, and I'm happy to do any type of training needed.
So Eric, I have to ask you this question because I ask all my guests this question.
Yeah.
What does the term rural advantage mean to you?
I think that gives a lot of credit to the work that has to be done in the schools in advocating and producing high quality education. And so that advantage is the strength and resilience that the educators and the students demonstrate daily. So that'd be what I would think.
Yeah. I love that answer. It's a great answer. Well, I want to say thank you for joining me today and giving us such a thorough look at Passport and ADEL, because these are tools that are not only innovative, but they're very practical for educators in not just rural places in Arizona, but all schools. And especially for those that are facing access challenges for resources and then alignment to those state standards. So really appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Thank you so much. And you'll put all my contact information out and.
Yep, I will. And for our listeners, I encourage you to explore these platforms further and think about how they could make a difference in your schools, whether it's streamlining lesson plans or high quality standards aligned materials, or just even fostering collaboration among the teachers at your school. So these are tools that offer tremendous potential for supporting your work and ultimately, we hope, right, enhancing academic outcomes for students, which is what it's all about. Yeah. Yep. So,
So
All
they
right.
can find ADEL at adel.azed.gov, and Passport is standards.az.gov. And those are all linked on our website as well.
Fantastic. And be sure that you reach out to Eric if you have any questions. He's really very, very committed to providing help and support and guidance as you need it. So
Thank you.
yeah, no, Eric, thanks for spending some time with me today on The Rural Scoop.
Thank you so much for listening to The Rural Scoop. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, or even leave us a comment. And be sure to follow on Twitter at Dr. Sadorf. That's Dr_SADORF, so that you never miss a new release. You can also check out previous episodes of The Scoop wherever you get your podcasts. Production support for The Rural Scoop is provided by Chattanooga Podcast Studios. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. See you next time for more great discussions